I'm back. No reaction videos for the last couple weeks for me. I did one for episode 5, I think, but haven't gotten around to editing it. I might not even put it up, but we'll see. But I'm back for this. At least I was able to watch the episodes solo, which is like, it's always a kind of nice to just be able to watch it without the eyes of TJ Eckelberg looking over you. That's a great Gatsby reference. I think I got that name right. But it was just way too tough to swing making those live streams with the baby. Just you're going nap and then feed, and like people come and want to see the baby, and mom was in town. Yeah, which was great, but sad I got to miss those last two reactions. But I'm back now for at least the breakdown of the final season. It would have felt wrong if I didn't do this, final thoughts.
Well, I would hate to have to do a breakdown by myself on this, honestly, because I like having a rapport with somebody. I do not enjoy being the only person in front of the camera. I like having somebody to bounce ideas off of. So I am appreciative that you came back for this episode, dude. I didn't even do a breakdown on last week's episode because I thought it was so bad. So I was like,
yeah. Yeah, and we can just condense those into two. I don't think we'll do I'm going to gloss over a lot of the scene by scene stuff just because we don't need to get super into detail with it. We all know what happened, and we can kind of treat these two as like the last episodes of the season together. So this is a 7 and 8 breakdown technically for those joining us, and thank you for joining us if you're a returning subscriber. If you're new to the channel, thank you. If you're someone who's hate watching because you saw some of our older videos where we mildly criticized the show and you got really angry about it, welcome to you too. Despite what you may think, we're happy to have you here watching. And we appreciate it. It's been an interesting go around. We've had some ups and downs this season, and we ended on a strange note, I would say. But let's just jump in. You want to just jump in? Any Star Wars news, anything you wanted to get out of the way before we jump in?
Oh, well, sad news. One of a prominent costume designer, I guess, on The Mandalorian and Ahsoka passed away.
Oh, that's sad. Who's that?
Recently. Oh, her name... I don't know how you say her last name, but it's Shauna Trpik. It's Trpcic. Yeah, Trpik. Shauna Trpik. She passed away very suddenly. I believe she was like 56, 58. But she was a costume designer for The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. And she was nominated for an Emmy this year.
Oh, that's horrible.
I know, that's really sad.
Wow. We've lost two big contributors to the Star Wars universe with Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll, and now costume designer, which the costumes pretty good, I would say. That's not an easy job either.
She was 56.
Oh, that's so
very
sad.
young.
She's super young. Yeah, wow.
That's horrible.
Well, sorry to hear that. Hopefully her family's okay. Our thoughts go out to her and her family. That's some sad news to start with.
Yeah. Not ideal a way to kick off the show. Sorry,
no, but she will be greatly missed for Star Wars, I would say. I mean, costumes, I think we can all agree for the last couple Star Wars shows have been pretty great, and that's not an easy job to have. So, thoughts go out to her family. On a lighter note, we have a full Ahsoka breakdown to do, finishing up the series. So, episodes 7 and 8. First one is, I forget the title of it. What is it? It's something.
Is it Dreams and Madness?
Maybe that's what it is. The official description is Hera must answer to the New Republic while far, far away. A reunion takes place. This was written by Dave Filoni and directed by Geeta Vasant Patel. I hope I said that right. But you want to jump in? Shall we jump into this?
Okay. Let's jump into this. I have words.
Okay, I have some thoughts. I have some thoughts as well. Okay, so we start out. We see Hera in this hearing on Coruscant, talking with Mon Mothma and some other senators. That guy, I don't know how to say his name. Ziono. They're just grilling her for her going off and being rogue on this mission and wasting resources or whatever's happening, and she's just trying to explain to them oh, this is a big deal and whatever, you guys should care more. And they don't. Ziono's dismissing everything she's saying. We do get an interesting point here where he mentions Moff Gideon, how he acted on his own, but I'm guessing this was all right after the events of Mando Season 3.
Yeah.
So we do have a very confirmed timeline at this point.
Finally, somebody even acknowledges it.
Yeah, so they're arguing about her disobeying orders, and we see a cameo come in for this season. Another cameo. We see C-3PO coming in on behalf of Leia Organa, talking about how Syndulla's mission was approved by her and everything's fine. It's no big deal. And whatever. They dismiss this thing, and Mon Mothma pulls Hera aside to say that she knows Leia didn't authorize this mission. And Hera's like, well, she did eventually. And then she's like, how real is the threat of Thrawn's return? She's like, we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And that's how the episode opens. And I don't know. This scene, I just... Ugh.
It was a maybe I'll kick us off here. The C-3PO thing, I felt like that was a very blatant now stand and clap because it's somebody you know scene. That's how that came off to me, where they were trying to make it be this big reveal, and I don't think it played off the way it was intended, or at least that's the way it came off to me. I also don't think that the New Republic is entirely wrong for grilling Hera on this, because she technically is just disobeying direct orders. She's not a good general. You know,
she
like
she just throws rank in front of everybody. She's not a good mom either. She's probably the most unlikable character in the show, in my opinion. And I just thought her acting here was like, I'm not buying it. I'm just not buying what you're.
It's just sarcastic and with no respect towards anyone. Like the line where she goes, Ziono's like, well, you disobeyed orders from the New Republic. And she goes, no, I disobeyed you. Or whatever the line was there. Yeah. I was like, no, that's not it. That's not the vibe. It's just, this is the problem I have with the female leads in this show, is they all seem to be portraying one emotion, which is sassy comebacks, except maybe Ahsoka, who's just very reserved, and we can get to that when we get to that. Yeah. But with Sabine and Hera, it's just like constant, like, no, screw you, I'm doing my own thing. And it's like, could we actually have a moment where she's humbled? Yeah. And she's like, I made a mistake, but I did it with the best intentions. Yeah. Because then it just makes her out to be like this extremely unlikable person who goes against the book for literally no reason at all.
Yeah. And I don't know, I still don't really fully understand her character. This is a criticism with the show in general, which I think is like, they relied too much on previous content to build the structure for the show without letting it stand on its own. And so she's always just kind of been, for this show for me, because I haven't watched Rebels all the way through, is like, I don't really get her motivations and why she is the way she is, you know? So it's tough.
Well, they didn't really... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we go any further, I just wanted to say, like, there's a lot of strong elements with the show. And I'm going to talk about the show as a whole a lot through this episode, because it's the show's over with now. There's a lot of strong things with this show and a lot of things that I was happy with. And some of the things I was happy with was the cinematography in some of the episodes. The set design was really good in some of these episodes. Some of the creativity and sound design and stuff like that was like really cool. And it filled in a lot of areas where, like, I think Andor and Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi really lacked. And I know people think Andor is the greatest show ever, but I think that this show did a lot of things a little bit better than Andor. However, with this scene, the set felt very fan filmy to me. Might be a nitpick. Might be a total nitpick, but it just felt like, I don't know, like the New Republic just seems so lame, dude. They seem so lame and unlikable and uncool. And that's been the case for all the shows that we've seen the New Republic in thus far. They're just... I don't know. I don't fully get it. I don't fully get the vibe they're going for. And this is partially the sequel's fault. Like, they didn't really establish that in the sequels. We never got to see the New Republic really before it was the rise of the First Order or whatever. But I don't know. I felt like this scene was just like, I thought the writing was really just choppy. And I thought the set was like, I don't know. It just felt cheap to me.
Convoluted?
In a way. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. Her telling Mon Mothma it's a serious threat. I don't know. I wasn't like buying it. It was just like, I don't feel the emotion there.
A lot of this show, I think the major issue with this show is they are constantly telling you things, but they're not showing you. So, for example, the threat of Thrawn, we're constantly told throughout this show, this is a bad thing if he comes back. But they don't give us a lot of evidence as to why it's so bad that he comes back. They just constantly tell each other that it's really bad if he comes back. Right. So,
and they expect everyone to know exactly who he is.
It's the simplistic.
If you are an uninitiated watcher of Star Wars and you're not fully caught up on the books and the cartoons and all this stuff, you have no clue who this guy is. You're like, why? I don't get it. You're totally right. Why is this guy so dangerous to come back? And I didn't see that once throughout the entire show. Why he's a force to be reckoned with. You know.
Well,
what I mean?
the dialogue also doesn't back this up either. So in the scenes where Mon Mothma and Hera are talking, as an example, they're very basic conversations. So it'll be like, "How real is the threat of Thrawn's return?" Well, we have to prepare for the worst, and then they cut it off. Instead of having these two characters actually get into a dialogue about why it would be so bad if Thrawn comes back. To end this scene really quickly, I was not a really big fan about how Hera was like, "Oh, well, Leia did approve it eventually."
Yeah.
Like, it just felt really cheap. It's like, don't we have any consequences for actions in this show? Like, can't Hera just stand up and be like, "I firmly believe this is happening. I'm sorry if this came off as disrespectful, but this is very, very important because the fate of our galaxy is like in the hands of these two individuals." So I don't know. The whole Leia approved that thing, I didn't really buy it. I just felt like it was a cheap way to clear Hera's name, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, I don't care about her story arc, to be honest. Like, they just haven't made me care about the character.
What arc?
Enough. Exactly. What arc? Okay, so moving on, I want to get through this. Moving on, they jump through hyperspace. We see Hu Yang and Ahsoka. They're trying to find Sabine. They get out of the space whales, and they start going to Peridia. And there's like little mines there to destroy the Purgle, however you say it.
Tomato.
Yeah, whatever. And they have to fly through, and they go into this debris field to try to escape Thrawn killing them. So we see Thrawn. He's with Enoch, and they are talking about how this starship has entered the system. And Thrawn is like talking to Morgan about Ahsoka Tano, and then he's like, "We'll be one step ahead of her no matter what." Again, just telling us how smart he is.
You also skipped over the Anakin hologram thing.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, I did. Oh, yeah, sorry, totally. I'm an idiot.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute, guys. Sorry. She's doing which is actually one of the good scenes of this episode, is she's doing the like training, and you see Anakin's hologram. He's talking to her about the Clone Wars, what kind of trials she's going to face against Grievous. We get an Asajj Ventress shout out, Count Dooku, telling her to practice her lightsaber forms. Hu Yang watches, and she says that Anakin made 20 of these recordings, and that was the last one he did.
Which, give us the recordings.
Yeah, give us all the recordings. Give us more Anakin. That's what we want to see.
That works on me. I'm not going to lie. Anything with Anakin, that works on me. I'm not even going to lie about it.
Yeah, you got to love seeing our boy Hayden Christensen, who's been the highlight of the show, still to this day, was the best part about it.
Touche.
So, okay. And then, oh, by the way, then we have another mention of Anakin when Thrawn is talking to Elsbeth about Ahsoka. He's saying that her master was Anakin Skywalker. Ooh.
It's so funny where he like looks at the thing and he's like, there's so many memes online of people just clipping that one shot of Thrawn looking up going, her master was Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that one from Ratatouille you posted. That one's pretty funny. Okay, so then they chase her. I already went through that part. They chase her. They give up pursuit. And then, let's see. Oh, Hu Yang says he's going to run a scan to try to find Sabine so that they can find her. Then, meanwhile, we go to this caravan of the turtle people. And they're moving extremely slowly across this planet. Which, positive thing here, I think this planet looks interesting and cool. Like, it seems very dark. And, like, it's kind of a different type of world. And
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, some cool shots here, I thought. And anyways, they're talking about the Battle of Endor and if the Emperor died, and Sabine's like, well, that's what people said. But
which, of course, we had to throw that line. We have to throw that line in there to make the sequels make sense.
Yeah. And then Ezra's like, I missed everything. And she's like, oh, I thought we never find you. And then whatever. This conversation wasn't super interesting.
It was extremely. I believe that this episode was probably the least popular of the entire season. I know a lot of people that are not happy with the finale, but this episode, everyone was like, what the heck was this?
Yeah.
I think the consensus was the same on all of it, but their conversation here was extremely flat because apparently the only emotion that Sabine and Ezra can convey to each other is quip, quip back.
Yeah.
Smirk, smirk back. And it's like, guys, can we have a moment of genuine human emotion? Because if I was gone for 10 years and I had been fighting the Empire and trying so hard to save my friends and family from it, for one of my best friends to come back into my life and be like, hey, by the way, we destroyed it. It's gone. I would have been like, holy shit, what happened?
Yeah. Well, also just talking like a normal person talks. Like none of these people talk like normal people. Like we don't talk like you and I are having a conversation now, which is
they're reading lines off a script.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, Ezra, Garazeb Aurelios is now training recruits. Hera is now a general.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh my God, I can't believe all this stuff happened. I can't believe the Emperor's dead.
So many quips just to each other. Like Hera's the queen of this. She just quips the whole show. Sabine loves to quip. Ahsoka loves to look smugly at people and fold her arms and like just judge everybody and go, look how much smarter I am than you. Look at me. Yes.
The hand thing. This is like a trademark thing that she does in animation, but they may have abused it too much in live action.
Dude, 100%. That's you and I have talked about this in
we have
Batch
the little
they
hands.
always go like this.
They always go like this in Bad Batch.
Yeah. Okay, so Bridger is talking to about.
And then he's like, rightfully so. He's like, so Ahsoka took you on as your apprentice, really? Mm-hmm. Genuine, good, like natural reaction to have, and she's like, go on.
Yeah.
And then it's, I don't know, like the whole thing just felt so dumb. Like it was just a dumb conversation, and it would have been nice to see some, what happened here? Is this person okay?
Yeah. Which by the way, we get a quick, brief sentence that covers their whole relationship, which I think is hysterical later in the episode, which is about Sabine and Ahsoka, which is like, they just, all this tension you built up over the season, they explain in one sentence later on, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
But then also he's like, is it complicated? And she's just like, yeah.
Oh, I hated that line. My response, and somebody was like, I laughed so hard when you said that. She goes, it's complicated. And I just spit out uncomplicated Sabine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody was like, that in the comments, they were like, that made me laugh so hard. But also like, in my personal opinion, Ezra would be asking more questions and prodding her a lot more for answers, as opposed to just being like, yeah, okay. I find it weird that he would just sit back and be like, oh yeah, okay, it's complicated, whatever. I'm like,
you have all the time in the world. You're going at a snail's pace across the plains.
Well, also, like, where's the sense of urgency? Like, Sabine is acting like they have all the time in the world, when in reality, they don't have a way to get off the planet. She thinks Ahsoka is dead. Thrawn is about to escape, and she's just chilling with Ezra, and there's no sense of urgency to the situation. They're just chilling.
I also just don't buy their friendship. Like, Ezra, he's a good actor. I like that guy. I think I like him too. I think the writing for him wasn't amazing. And there's a scene that comes up later that I just feel like such wasted potential for him. But like, I don't buy them just being like friends. Like, it's just, they don't talk to each other like friends talk to each other. You haven't seen this guy in years. And like, you're gonna be sitting there, not being able to wait to tell the next thing. You know?
Or be like, hey, we have to get off this planet now because the person that you fought so hard to get away from us is now planning a massive jump to hyperspace. And also, the Night Sisters of Dathomir are involved. So we're kind of fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And then, dude, I don't know. Their relationship, they rely too much on Rebels to explain the context here. And even now, I think people who watch Rebels are confused by their relationship. So...
they are into each other, okay? That entire conversation they were having, the way they were looking at each other is not the way friends look at each other. That is I want you look, if I've ever seen it.
I just don't understand why we can't have, I don't know, whatever. I'm going to
romance.
Move on. I don't want to be too negative here. So at the end of this, we see Balin and Shin, who are with the bandits watching on a hilltop, who are sitting on their little Lord of the Rings wolf things. And so we see the three witches now. Thrawn wants them to find Ahsoka. They use these little drone orb things to just pinpoint exactly where she is through Night Sister magic.
Can I add something here real quick on that?
Yeah.
if they could do that to find Ahsoka, why didn't they just do that to find Ezra?
Who?
The Night Sisters.
I don't think Thrawn really cared about him, did he? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, he's like, well, we're gonna let, when he was like, hey, Sabine, I'll let you go find your friend. It made it sound like she was, where, I'm not sure if this was dialogue that he had, so like, take this with a grain of salt, but it sounded like he genuinely didn't know where Ezra was, so he let Sabine go to find Ezra, so Baylan and Shin could kill them. And if he really needed to find Ezra, and you would think that he would kill Ezra because Ezra's a Jedi and therefore a threat to Thrawn, why wouldn't he just have the Night Sisters use their magical orb powers in the same way that they tried to find Ahsoka?
Yeah, you're right, actually. It doesn't make
like,
sense.
Did nobody consider that from a writing standpoint?
I guess not. Because I don't even know, what are these red orbs? Are they can find anything? Is that?
I don't know. They're multifaceted orbs. You can use them to hold a prisoner, like they did with Sabine. You can use them to track Jedi.
God,
I don't really know.
They like bind Sabine in one of those episodes. I forgot. Okay.
Keep going. I'm sorry.
So, that's right. So then we go to Ahsoka's ship. She can't find Sabine. She's like, we don't need a scan. I can find another way. And Ahsoka calls out to Sabine through the Force. And suddenly Sabine's focus drifts off when Ezra's talking to her, and a sense of realization crosses her face.
Another side note here.
She quietly says Ahsoka's name. What?
Another note here. Why didn't we have a moment in the show of Sabine potentially trying to reach out to the Force to find Ezra? It doesn't work on her end, and then Ezra Force connects to Sabine. That would have made so much more sense because Ezra and Sabine have such like a deep bond, as opposed to Ahsoka and Sabine, because we're shown throughout the show that Ahsoka and Sabine are not on the same wavelength. And even Huyang comments on it in this scene. He goes, do you really think your bond is that strong? Like,
yeah.
And then, true, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The fact that Ahsoka reaches out to Sabine through the Force, especially when Sabine isn't really that strong. And it just would have made a lot more sense had they given that moment to Ezra and Sabine, because they're so much closer and her desire to see him supposedly is a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Than to do what Ahsoka says. I don't know. I thought that was weird.
Yeah,
but whatever.
That's a good point. So now we see the Night Sister saying she's found Ahsoka. And then Thrawn's like, open fire to, what's the guy's name? Enoch?
Yeah. Enoch. We hardly knew
then we see, it says here in the description, on the T6, Tana remains lost in her distant stare. Her character should just be called Distant Stare, because that's she does the whole show. It's just, yes. And then suddenly we see turbo lasers raining down on them, and then they have to race towards Peridia. They try to escape. Thrawn's like, well done, Enoch. You did a great job. Re-engage the opponent. And then we go back to the plains of Peridia, and we see the turtle people seeing two mounted figures in the distance. Ezra's like, are those friends of yours? She's like, no. Baylan tells Shin to contact Thrawn and orders her to kill Ren and Bridger. He tells her to take her place in the coming Empire. When Shin asks if he is not helping, Baylan says that her ambition drives her in one direction, but he has a different path. Okay. Okay. What? And then, okay, never mind. I'll get to this in a second. So then Shin sends the location to Thrawn, but before they leave, Baylan gives her one final lesson, that impatience will lead to defeat. And then he just fucks off and leaves. What? Where did he go? Why did he leave her? I don't know. I was so confused by this. Like, genuinely, like, what's happening here?
It was very vague, and in the final episode, they kind of answer it, but not really.
No, dude, they don't answer it, and we can get to that in the next episode.
They do, and they do, and they don't. They do, and they don't. But this was basically
one final lesson. I'm like, you're leaving her? Wait, why?
This is like the last bit of dialogue that Ray Stevenson has as Balin in the show. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
And Shin, because I don't believe Shin speaks once in the finale either. That is a weird place to end those characters.
Super weird, considering they were
weird.
like some of the most interesting characters we've gotten in a while.
It would have been more interesting if, and again, we can talk about this at the very, very end when we're going through the finale as well, but it would have been incredibly interesting had they had a fight about what they were supposed to do, and Balin's like, no, I'm going off and going over here. And if you want to survive, you need to go do this. And it could have been like a really interesting split.
Yeah.
But it was just very casual, and it was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're done with each other. Bye now. Yeah. And it just didn't add up with the rest of the season, especially like their dynamic as master and apprentice. It was like, okay, well, you've served your purpose in this story.
I'm like, why are you? I truly don't understand why he just left. Doesn't make any sense to me. If someone can explain that, please let me know. Let me know if I'm crazy for not understanding that. But I don't know. I was very confused by him just leaving her and being like, hey, last lesson. I know we've been really close for this whole show, and now I'm just going to leave you. What? Okay.
It's the Mortis thing, which we'll talk about at the end. But
okay. All right. Well, good. I'm glad there's at least some explanation for it. All right. So they find out about location, and then Thrawn's talking to Morgan about if Balin proves capable, they may win the day. Okay. And then we see the bandits that are pursuing the caravan, and they start kind of attacking them. Ezra's like, oh, we're peaceful people. They're peaceful. They don't have weapons, all that stuff. And he tells the guys to take shelter. In the meantime, Ahsoka's getting chased by the starfighters. Then this is when Sabine and Ezra get out of their little caravan thing and tell everyone else to stay inside. So then meanwhile, we see Ahsoka telling Hu Yang to land, but he's like, that's not protocol, whatever. Which, by the way, quick note on Hu Yang, like, really well-written character. I will say positively, Hu Yang is a cool character. They did a great job in all elements. The effects with him, the sound design, the voice acting, the writing, I thought was just... he was an interesting character. Like, just an interesting. He added interesting dialogue, which is why I was so confused about other elements and other characters where we didn't have as interesting a dialogue. But he had, like, whoever wrote him specifically did a good job, I thought.
He expressed more than Ahsoka and Sabine.
He totally did. He had, like, funny,
way more
quippy,
personality.
and, like, fit his personality, which was like, he's a droid, he's reserved.
Yeah,
but, like, there was personality to it. There was. The inflection in his voice, like, there was still emotion behind it in a weird way, considering he's not a person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just shout out to David Tennant and whoever worked on that character, because I thought he was great from start to finish. Like, I completely agree. No comments on Hu Yang whatsoever.
I completely agree.
Very interesting character.
But also, it's David Tennant, so
yeah, look,
the dude's amazing.
Fantastic job. Ahsoka exits the cockpit and she slides down, and then Hu Yang leads the starfighters on a chase. And then Tano is met by Balin, who says he didn't expect to see her again. And then she asks if he's disappointed. He says nobody cannot allow her to interfere. He draws his lightsaber. Ahsoka says she doesn't have time for this. After a wait, Balin charges at Ahsoka, and the duel begins. Okay, we can get to this in a second, but I thought this was a little weird. Meanwhile, we see two bandits approaching Sabine and Ezra, and we see Sabine handing Ezra his former lightsaber, which I was like, okay, cool. This could be like a really cool moment to see how badass Ezra is. This guy that we've talked about the whole season. If you're uninitiated to Rebels and you haven't watched it, you don't know who this guy is, what he's capable of. This is a perfect opportunity to show what a badass this guy is. And then he just says he doesn't need it. And I gave it to you. It's yours. And she's like, I can use my blasters. He's like, no, I don't need them either, because the Force is my ally. And then they start fighting.
By the way, apparently not, because he builds a lightsaber in the next episode.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah, he starts... Okay. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think this was a missed opportunity to just show who this Ezra guy is. Because, if you didn't watch every other piece of Star Wars content before this, you're a little lost. And my whole thing, and I've said this since the beginning, is you need to let the show stand on its own. You can't have shows rely too much on other shows. Otherwise, like, as a whole, they're just not going to be as good. And when it comes down to it, this is how I've always been with every Star Wars show. I'm comparing it to every single other TV show, not just Star Wars content. And that's what you have to do. If you want to know if a show's really, really good or not, it should be able to stand on its own. And still be really good, and you shouldn't have to like read up on a bunch of stuff beforehand. And I'll get to this in like my final thoughts, but like they just relied too much on previous content, and Ezra just left a lot more to be wanted from that character. After talking about him for the first half of the season, then we meet him, and then it's a very underwhelming meeting. And then you're like, oh, maybe he's going to fight with his lightsaber. No, he does like force karate. And you're like, okay, I'm just kind of confused as to who this guy is. And then, we see him later, and we'll get to that in a couple scenes, but, or a couple episodes, next episode. But just misused, I think, especially in this scene. It would have been really nice to see like him be a badass and like take his old lightsaber back. It would have been cool.
It's just very strange to me how there's a lot of things that are strange to me about this scene. I think it is weird that he didn't take it back for at least a second. You don't have to have him using it the entire time, but I just find it weird that he would turn it down. And when he says, oh, I don't need it, the Force is my ally. Oh, okay, that's fine. But then why do you have him build a lightsaber in the next episode?
Yeah.
It just doesn't add up. On top of that, him and Sabine are standing there and they're like posing and they're having their quippy dialogue while these supposed bandits are not firing at them for some reason. And they have them completely surrounded. It's just really, really strange. The whole way that scene played out, it's like, I don't know, could you have them maybe fighting and then bantering together? Even that would have been better had they been like fighting and she's like, you need to take this. And he's like, I don't need it. Like that would have been more fun as opposed to the awkward one shot on top of them, and then they're just standing and quipping and looking at all the bad guys, and the bad guys aren't making a move.
Yeah.
I just thought it was
very
strange.
Much like they were just hitting the beats they wanted to hit without like thinking about how you get to those beats, if that makes sense.
Right. Or just like the interplay. It's like you can have them fighting and they can still be having this banter. That's like a trademark of Rebels, right? I guess you wouldn't know because you never saw it. But like even like in Clone Wars, they have scenes like that all the time where it's like the characters will be fighting, but they'll also be throwing these comments at each other, and that's part of the fun interplay of the scene. Here they were just kind of standing there. Yeah. And nobody, it just played out very strangely, especially because nobody's firing at them. And it's like the whole scene was meant to perfectly align so they could have this awkward little banter in the beginning. On top of that, too, choreography for Ezra was like, nah. You really could have done something super cool with the fighting style of just using the Force. But I don't know if it was the directing or I don't know if it was the choreography, but it just felt like the camera was sitting here and then he's like doing all of these things, but they don't look remotely as cool.
Yeah.
Because of the stagnant camera angles. I don't know. It wasn't all that impressive to me. And I think that they could have made that scene a lot more fun if they had just maybe mixed the dialogue and the action a little bit more instead of the awkward, we're just going to stand here and quip. While everybody around us wait to shoot us.
I don't hate the idea of doing like force karate, which is
it's a great idea.
But I just, just the execution of it. I don't know.
Dude, he could have been like a Chirrut from Rogue One.
Yeah.
Chirrut from Rogue One is so
cool.
badass, dude. He's so cool. I thought that they should have done something like that with Ezra.
Totally. Yeah, dude, I agree. And I just think they missed the mark on that. Anyways, they're fighting. Ezra's using the Force to kill all these guys with Force karate. Shin attacks him, hits off a slice of his hair, and they're fighting, whatever. So at this point, we see Thrawn's gunships that are arriving soon, and while Sabine and Shin are fighting, Ahsoka and Baylan are continuing their fight. Baylan gains the advantage and knocks Ahsoka to the ground before he can strike her down. He deflects his blade with one of her lightsabers, but she parries, and Baylan says she can't beat him. And then Ahsoka goes, I don't have to win, and then just runs away.
Again, why didn't they use like some dialogue during this fight scene to kind of hint as to where these characters would be left in the finale?
Also, what was the point of this fight? How was Baylan there at that exact moment when she landed? What is he saying you can't interfere with? I never understood that. That never gets resolved. What interfere with his thing? Was she trying to fight him? Because she didn't want to fight him. She's like, you're in my way. No. But then she landed next to him to fight him. You could have avoided him. So I was just very confused by both these characters here. I thought it was a huge misstep of Baylan's character and Ahsoka's character to be like, how'd you even meet in the first place? I don't get how they met each other because neither of them wanted to see each other. And then Baylan's like, you can't interfere. But if you cared so much about interfering with Shin, you'd be helping her. But that's not what he cares about.
Yeah. That's what's so strange is you like interfering with what? Him and his journey, or interfering with Shin? Because you made a conscious choice to leave Shin to go do this so you could go off and do your own thing. So interfering with what?
Yeah.
And I feel like they could have used this scene to set up what happens in the finale. Because in the finale, you find out kind of what Balin's motivations are. It's like, oh, he's seeking the Mortis gods, or at least that's at least like the hint as to what it was. What would have been interesting is like you have to add little things in these scenes to help them push the story along. Like it would have been great if Balin and Ahsoka were fighting and Ahsoka gets caught off guard and she looks up and she sees Morai.
Yeah.
The little bird that represents the daughter. And she's like, oh, crap. And she gets distracted and maybe Balin gets the upper hand and injures her.
Yeah.
And then takes off. But
cool.
That's what I mean. Like playing off what you're saying is like in these scenes, like these scenes don't serve a purpose to push the story along. It just feels like they're happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It didn't connect with me. That's my whole complaint. I'm like, we're not showing enough and we're not spending enough time with these moments. Like they fought very briefly and it was a very underwhelming fight, I thought. And it was just, I don't know, a little disappointing.
It just didn't do anything to move anybody forward. It was like, we're fighting for no reason. Yeah. And it's completely unclear what Balin's intentions are here, but I guess we're done now so Ahsoka can go save her friends.
Yeah. All right. So whatever, they fight and then Ahsoka goes and joins Ezra and Sabine, whatever. Thrawn speaking favorably about his Jedi opponents. He's saying that the skirmish was a distraction from his plan, blah, blah, blah. And then they end up beating Shin and her zombie stormtroopers, and then Ahsoka's like, hey, you should help we can help you. And then Shin's like, gives just a tense look, doesn't say a word, and then just runs away with the worst running form I've ever seen.
Nobody really knows how to run on this show.
No. And Sabine wants to chase after her, and Ahsoka's like, no, don't do it. And I was like, okay, so she ran away. All right. Again, confused. She seems like someone who would want to fight and like has a lot of anger in her, but she just runs away and like, it's just a weird way to leave that character.
Doesn't complete the task she set out to complete.
No. Like, no conviction there. Also, there was no excuse for her to lose that. They had the upper hand. I don't know. Maybe it's just an experience. All right, so Ahsoka's relieved to see Sabine. They talk about how everything's great, and Sabine quips that she was wrong when Sabine thought Ahsoka was dead. Anyways, the episode, Ezra starts speaking with Sabine and Ahsoka, telling me he gets the feeling they'll be going home after all. And they watch they see Ahsoka's ship come down from above, and then the episode ends. And yeah, I don't know. Like, we might as well just jump into the next one, just so we can condense all thoughts into one. But yeah, it was kind of confusing. And I'm going to try to be as fair as I possibly can. It just, a lot of the character choices were very confusing. And this is I think kind of an issue with the season as a whole, which we can also get into at the end. But the Balin Shin thing just kind of bummed me out. Like, the direction they went with, it seemed like they just kind of sidelined them as characters and stopped investing in them. And then, I don't know, they both made very strange choices.
In my opinion, this episode was just a massive waste of time for everybody, because it didn't progress the plot that much further. Other than getting Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra reunited, it didn't move the plot forward if you compare it to the last episode. Like, this is the episode prior to the finale, so it really needs to set up the finale and really set the foundation of what to expect in the finale. And it was so casual that we honestly had no idea what the setup was before the final episode of the season. And I just think it's really, like, Thrawn didn't do anything in this episode that moved him forward from the previous one.
No.
And the thing that drives me crazy...
What's so cool about his... I don't get what's so cool about him. Sorry, I haven't read all the expanded universe and the canon books about who he is. He doesn't seem like a genius to me in this show.
Dude,
like, he's just ordering people around with his hands behind his back. And you're like, okay, what's going on?
He is a Saturday morning cartoon villain. When something happens slightly against his favor, he goes, exactly as planned. Twist my twirly mustache. Like, I'm the evil person here. You know, there's nothing remotely threatening about the guy. I don't even know why we're supposed to be so scared of him. because he stayed in the same place this entire episode. He did not make any move forward. And in addition to that, there was no sense of urgency from Ahsoka, Sabine, or Ezra regarding the fact that he is planning to make his escape. And this whole episode, in my opinion, was way too casual, and it should have made us fearful going into the finale.
Yeah, it should have been a kind of a cliffhanger, like what's going to happen, like what are we leading up to? And it didn't really do that. It was just like, I don't know, there was no sense of urgency with any of this. Like, no one's really scared that they're in a totally different galaxy and they have no idea how they're going to get back. And we don't know why Thrawn's this big, scary bad guy. And maybe a lot of Star Wars fans do. I'm sorry, I don't know why he's this big, scary, super villain bad guy. Like, I don't see it. I don't understand it. And that's just me being genuine. Sorry, like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. And I guarantee you, a lot of people that watch this show are feeling the same way. And that's why this show's not going to be like crushing the ratings, is people are just going to be a little lost. You're going to be sitting here like, I don't really understand these characters and what's going on and the context behind all this and the reading between the lines. And it doesn't help that the writing was not good with the way these characters talk to each other this episode. So this episode was not my favorite of the season, to put it lightly.
It was not good.
I didn't think it was great, personally, but I'm going to still try to be positive here because we go into episode 8. All right. So if we can, I'd like to jump into episode 8 and then we can give our full thoughts on the series.
Yeah, go for it.
Great things about it, bad things about it. Okay. So
we're now jumping into episode 8.
Let's jump into episode 8. This one was called, what was it called?
The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. I think it was like the Lion, the Witch,
and the
Witch,
and the Wardrobe. Yeah, taking some C.S. Lewis references here from Filoni. This was written by Dave Filoni, as every episode was, and directed by Rick Famuyiwa.
I never know how to say his last name. Gosh, forgive me.
I think it's Famuyiwa, or it's Famuyiwa. I don't know. Either way. Yeah, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the title of this one. Official description is the hero's race to prevent Grand Admiral Thrawn's escape. Okay, so we start off at the fortress, and Morgan's telling the Thrawn that the cargo transfer is complete, and then Thrawn tells Enoch to bring the Eye of Sion out of orbit so they can start leaving. They're like, hey, we know where Ahsoka is, and then Thrawn dispatches 2 TIE fighters. Morgan's like, hey, there's nothing the Jedi can do to stop us. Thrawn admits falling victim to the heroics of a single Jedi and will not let it happen again. He is determined because he got by Ezra, apparently. But they never explained how Thrawn got there, which I also think is hysterical. They just assume every viewer is going to know. Which, guys, I'm sorry. I have to look at this show from if I'm just going into Star Wars, there's a new show that's on the top feed of Disney Plus, and I want to watch it. I'm like, oh, it's Ahsoka. It's lightsabers. That looks cool. I like Star Wars. I watched some Star Wars growing up. I've seen the movies, right? You watch the show, and then they just assume you know everything about Thrawn and Ezra and Sabine, and you're like, okay, I'm lost.
They should have
lost
at
as
least,
to why Thrawn is so bad.
At the very least, they should
dangerous.
have opened the show with a flashback. They didn't have to do a lot. They could have shown glimpses of it, but they needed to do something to tie the non-Rebels fans into it.
Yes.
Because I had to explain everything to Dad about this show, and that's a problem.
Yes, depending on who you ask. I know there's going to be Star Wars fans who get in the comments here and they're like, "Well, you're not a real Star Wars fan if you haven't watched that stuff." Okay, fine. You can tell me that. That's fine. But I'm just coming to you from like an enjoyer of TV and movies, right? TV shows and movies. Like I should be able to enjoy something that someone puts out without having watched and read thousands of hours of content. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like, I just think that was a huge misstep. I still, by this episode, I don't buy Thrawn being this huge ultimate bad guy. All right. And then again, with the remark about how he vows not to let the heroics of a single Jedi like get him again, you're like, okay, what are we talking about here? I have no idea what you're talking about. Thrawn thanks the Great Mothers for their alliance, blah, blah, blah. They ask if, the mothers ask Morgan if she's willing to abandon her old life, and she's like, I'm pledging my life. She really wants to restore Dathomir and all that stuff. which I kind of get her motivations. I think hers is pretty clear. Like, I think they could have done a better job at the beginning of cementing who she is. Like,
Yeah.
Like, she's a Night Sister or whatever, and then, like, say what Dathomir is and what happened or whatever, and then her motivations are a lot more clear. But she seems like very devoted, and I think they did a somewhat decent job of her motivations, right, as a character.
Yeah. Well, they gave
whatever.
her the Night Sister baptism, which is also something that we saw in Clone Wars with Asajj Ventress.
Oh, right.
With that exact dialogue, it's like, do you pledge yourself to the Dathomir sister, Mother Dawson?
Yeah. If you are watching that and you have no idea what's going on, you're like, what the hell? What is this? All right, then they use their powers to forge this magic sword in the stone thing.
The Blade of Talzin. Get your facts straight.
They give it to her, and she clutches it, and it burns green. And they're like, "Oh, it's this big samurai sword!" Oh, which was funny, I thought. Meanwhile, we see the Jedi shuttle over the convoy. Ezra's making his new lightsaber with Hu Yang. I mean, they have a bunch of quips they say to each other through this part. Bridger's rummaging through the workshop, annoying Hu Yang, who says he has a system. I thought that was a funny line. He's like, "I have a system," like implying the droid is kind of unorganized. I thought that was funny. That was like a cool line. Good writing for Hu Yang. He doesn't have... honestly, I have no comments on his
writing is the best
character.
on the show.
It's very good. It's just well done. Hu Yang's asking who taught Bridger how to build his lightsaber, and then they mention Kanan. Again, no one has any clue who this is.
Yeah.
I guess you could maybe get some context here because they're talking about how... They talked about how he was his master and stuff in this point right here. Hu Yang's talking about how he's familiar with him. And Ezra's asking how old Hu Yang is, and he's like, I'm old enough. It can be both challenging and meaningful.
Wait, what did you just skip over? He says he's old enough, and then...
So Hu Yang remarks it makes sense. But he taught every Jedi youngling in the Jedi Temple, including his late master. And Hu Yang recalls that Caleb was clever, curious, and shy due to troubled times. And Bridger asks how old Hu Yang is. The droid replies he's old enough to know that it can be both challenging and meaningful, like age, I guess. So he hands him a blade emitter. It was a spare he kept for Kanan, which he kind of just pulled out of nowhere. Well, here's the exact one I had for your master.
I just saved it for such an occasion.
Is, by the way, a cool emitter, I thought. It was kind of a neat emitter that they had. With this little plate on top of it. He ignites it. It's a blue lightsaber. He builds his own.
Again, not playing into the whole "the Force is my ally" thing. I don't need a saber. And then in the next episode, building a lightsaber for some weird reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think he was just like, no, it was more of like, I gave that to you. That was for you to use. I'll be fine without one. That's kind of how I interpreted what he did. I didn't think it was like a whole, like, I only need the Force. I think it was more of just like I gave that to you as a gift. We're friends. Keep it. I'll be fine without it because I'm a badass kind of thing. That's kind of how I interpret it.
Until I need a lightsaber.
Until I need one, yeah.
I don't know. I think, dude, I'm sorry. I thought it was dumb. Also, I thought that you had to go through this ritual to get a kyber crystal on a Lum to forge your lightsaber, but apparently Hu Yang has a bunch of kyber crystals with him as well. I don't know. It just worked out a little too perfectly for the plot.
You can just build a lightsaber on the ship.
There you go. We have all this stuff.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, but to be fair, let's be fair. Maybe Ahsoka collected them from Inquisitors she's killed.
I know, but we can't, that's a huge problem with the show is people are just filling in the gaps, in their brains. Yeah. As opposed to the story actually fleshing out these details. Because these details do matter. The in-between parts do matter. And what this show is relying too much on is just skipping over the details. Because the plot needs it to. And that's the issue I have with scenes like this. Where it's like, oh, well, he's building a lightsaber now because the plot needs him to. So he can have it to fight in the next scene. Yeah. Like, that's the issue I have with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't disagree with that. I think that's fair. That's a fair criticism. So before Ezra can start practicing with Sabine, he looks around, she's left the room. And so Ezra's like, hey, what's up with Sabine and Ahsoka? And Hu Yang's just like, oh, she was just concerned that Sabine was training for the wrong reasons after the purge in Mandalore. The purge killed hundreds of thousands, including her family. And at the time, Ahsoka feared that if Sabine unlocked her full potential, she'd become dangerous. All right, so there's the final, like, we finally get, which to me is like, okay, fine. Why didn't we talk about this earlier? I don't get why they held it till the last episode to talk about this. Like, that line could have been in the second episode.
Also, it could have been their arcs for the entire season. You know, like having to come to terms with the fact that things didn't work out in the past and that they now have to face each other and work with each other, even if that means the relationship is not going to be what they initially like intended as a master and apprentice. You could have put a really interesting arc in place for both Sabine and Ahsoka, and you just didn't. You just made them angry at each other without explanation for the entire season. And then when they got split apart, the audience was expected to have this reaction of, oh my gosh, oh no. But then the relationship wasn't established in the first place, so we don't even really know what was lost.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then we have
one
throwaway
given the characters
line.
more depth to do it, to explain that at the beginning, so then you understand their motivations a little bit more and why they talk to each other the way they do. Why Ahsoka always looks at Sabine judgingly.
Because they don't like each other, dude. The show has made that very clear. They do not seem like they like each other. They seem like they tolerate each other at the most.
Yeah, and then I look back on the second or third episode where she calls her Padawan, you know, and you're like, and she's like, Padawan. And then they blast off into space, and you're like, okay, like it just makes it make less sense almost. I don't know.
The whole relationship it's not showcased. Like, and they dropped Sabine's training after about the third episode, I think it was. It's like Ahsoka was training her, and then they never do it again. Nor do they talk about it or like what it means to be a Padawan. It's like they just throw these lines in when they need them to happen. It's not a consistent arc throughout the show. They just do it whenever they're like, okay, well, we need a line here about Jedi or why they fell out. That should not have been a throwaway line. That should have been the arc for the entire season for both characters.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about this since we're like, why do they hate each other? No one knew. It's like, that's not that big of a thing. It's like it's just a quip. It's just a quick line.
It's a throwaway line.
Yeah. All right. So Sabine exits the shuttle, finds Ahsoka meditating on top of it. There's weird choices like this throughout where I'm like, okay, cool. And Ahsoka asks if she's pleased, and Sabine's like, well, I'm relieved. And Ahsoka's like, well, your gamble paid off, and tells her that she knows about the deal with Balin. And then Sabine's like, well, I managed to find Ezra. And she's like, well, it might not have happened if you chose differently. And Sabine apologizes for destroying the star map, but Ahsoka's like, yeah, whatever, who cares? Not a big deal. I don't know, I'd be pretty pissed. I'd be pretty pissed if I was Ahsoka.
Dude, I imagine Ezra. Like, the fact that, like, Sabine hasn't told Ezra, by the way, I traded off the map so I could see you again, but in doing so, I unleashed a potentially bigger threat on the galaxy. Yeah. Like, they needed to address that. Like, Sabine, because of her choice, thousands of people are going to die, and all of those deaths will now be on Sabine. And the show just doesn't want to talk about that.
No.
Like,
right.
Whether it's through Ahsoka, whether it's through Ezra, the show does not want to address the fact that Sabine made a critical mistake. And in doing that, she undid Ezra's sacrifice.
Yeah, she totally did.
And what you should have done is create this sort of rift between Ezra and Sabine. Ezra being like, what do you mean you did this? Yeah. Like, are you serious? Yeah. I left so you could all be safe, and you undid this? Like, that would be a huge deal to him, because the thing that they constantly hammer home in Rebels is the fact that Ezra's like, I will do anything to protect the people that I love. He has a whole arc on this in Star Wars Rebels Season 4 where he comes very close to turning to the dark side, and then he doesn't.
Yeah.
You know? It's so, like, to have Sabine make this very significant choice and then have no other characters have a problem with it is weird to me. And it's weak storytelling. Because then it says, oh, well, I guess the stakes don't exist or they don't really matter in this show.
Yeah, it also just makes her unlikable, dude. Like,
she's so selfish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude.
Like, everyone knows that's a selfish decision. Like, obviously we can go, okay, you wanted to see your friend. But at the same time, when you saw your friend, it didn't seem like you really cared. You just gave each other smirks. I don't know.
And quipped. And then apparently, like, everything else was fine. It's just there were no stakes in this finale. And we can continue to talk about that, but there were no stakes here. And nobody wanted to discuss the fact that Sabine made a critical error. They were just like, you know what? There's going to be no repercussions for your shitty decision making.
Yeah.
You can just make bad decisions and everyone will be okay with it.
Yeah. Dude, I know. I'm gonna try to get through these next scenes quickly so we can get through our final thoughts on the season. Okay, so I'm sorry. Getting back to this, Ahsoka asks Sabine if she's kept up with her training, and she's like, "Well, I've gained better control over my lightsaber." And then Ahsoka does her classic, like, "Wielding a lightsaber is not the only thing about being a Jedi, and you trust in the Force." And it was just like, I don't know. The dialogue here was very weak between these two. There's no chemistry, zero chemistry between them.
No chemistry between them.
So then we see the TIE fighters approaching the shuttle. Ahsoka and Ezra jump onto the planes. They use their force powers to hold the ship so that the turtle people can escape. Sabine like crashes the shuttle into them. They blow up and die and whatever. Thrawn orders Enoch to prepare for a ground assault. Then we get to Huyang and the turtle people that are repairing the Jedi shuttle. Oh, Thrawn is talking about like, hey, are the volunteers aware of the Night Sisters' blessing or whatever? And Morgan's like, yes, they will give their lives for the security of the Empire and the galaxy, blah, blah, blah.
Basically send Morgan to die.
Yep, essentially. The Jedi and Sabine reach the outskirts of the fortress just as the Chimera, what is it? The big ship that Thrawn is in? Chimera?
I don't know how to pronounce it. I have like no knowledge of the Thrawn books.
Okay, so it's starting to dock in this Eye of Sion transport ring, whatever, and he's trying to take the Star Destroyer with him. Ahsoka's like, hey, how are we coming on the repairs, Huyang? And he's like, we're doing our best. And like, I thought that was also funny. Like, again, great writing for Huyang. Like, I thought that was funny. The little, like, when they mess up everything in the ship, and he's like, we're doing our best. Like, he's like, it might be a while, or whatever he says.
Yeah, he says something really funny there. He's like, you should just go. Like,
yeah, I wouldn't count on it. Ezra's explaining about how Thrawn woke the Great Mothers and rebuilt his warship, and he can't go alone. And Ahsoka's like, well, you're not alone, don't worry. So Ahsoka's like, hey, let's just try the front door. Okay, great, cool strategy. Thrawn orders his forces to bombard the Jedi and Sabine, saying that there's no reasoning with Skywalker's apprentice. So as they start approaching, they just start Leroy Jenkinsing towards this fortress under the ship, and then they just start shooting lasers at them. And like, despite this, they're just fine. They're going probably 30 miles an hour tops on these things, and the ship has like a million lasers, and it's shooting at the ground.
They can't hit one of them.
They can't hit any of them, which is just hysterical. And they get to the gate and just open it up with their force powers, breaching it. And I'm just like, I don't know, dude. That was, to me, I honestly like face palmed at that. I was like, what's going on? Like, we can't come up. I think the note I wrote was, what the hell? Like, we can't come up with a more creative way for them to get in to there before as the ship's raining down blaster fire, which would surely kill anyone else. They have plot armor, so they can get through fine.
Or blow them off their little creatures.
Yeah.
The creatures would get scared. Animals get frightened.
Dude, creatures against Star Destroyer? What? Dude, they have like homing systems, locking systems that they can shoot anything they want, and they just ride past them on these little wolf thingies. I don't know, dude. That was like such a bizarre choice of how they got into the fortress. Also just kind of lazy. We'll just have them ride in and just, no matter what happens when we shoot at them, they're not going to make it in. What?
It was dumb. It was not a creative way to get them inside.
No. I just thought it was very just like, again, what I said before. We have these beats we need to get to. They have to be in the fortress. Let's just have them right up. Let's just, come on, get to the next beat. Let's get to the next scene.
Beat.
Yeah.
And also makes Thrawn look even worse of a bad guy. You know, he does not look competent with every move that he makes. It makes him look stupider and stupider. You know, the fact that he didn't just
see him as being
this
mastermind. He doesn't seem like, he seems like kind of an oaf. Like they rode right in. They just rode right in. I don't know, dude. Like,
and he has Night Sisters on his side.
Yeah.
So he couldn't just have the Night Sisters locate Sabine, Ahsoka, and Ezra and use their magic to kill them?
And also, like, why can't you do something where he tricks them into going to a certain location, but he actually went to the other location, and then he gets to his ship and they escape, or something? Mm-hmm. I don't know, dude. I'm not an expert here, but
actually show his brilliance. Creative. Stop telling us he's brilliant and actually give us a showcase of his brilliance.
Exactly. So we see the night troopers going down the stairs and converge on the intruders, and we proceed to have one of the most boring action sequences of all time. Like they're cutting down these people. Dude, the motions with the lightsabers here, I'm sorry, dude. It was like...
And it was all shot straight on. Like, there were no interesting camera dynamics. You know that scene where they're all blocking, and then when Ahsoka cuts the two zombies in the front, and it's meant to be like an action hero Marvel pose?
Yeah.
The camera was so straight on, it just made it look really lame.
It did. It did. It was just like, I don't know, like, and the show up to these last couple episodes, I don't think was the worst show in the world. Like, there was some really good stuff in some.
Yeah, there are good elements, but these last two episodes
scenes with
fell
Anakin
off.
and Ahsoka were cool, but this one is just like, first of all, it's just very, like,
hit,
choreographed, telegraphed motions, and also one thing that's bothered me about the fights, and this has bothered me throughout the whole season. I couldn't really put my finger on what it was, but I figured it out last episode when Ahsoka was fighting Balin, and this episode when they're in this scene fighting a lot of stormtroopers, deflecting, killing, whatever. Mm-hmm. No one's out of breath. No one's even showing any emotion. They're just like, oh, that was easy. But you're like running around the room. There's got to be some exertion that you're doing by fighting. There's nothing. None of that. They're fine.
Effortless.
And Ahsoka has that moment where she's like, and you're like, oh, care. Like, that was, you guys, that wasn't intense at all. Like,
it was very Marvel-y.
I knew you were going to be fine. They're not going to kill you. They already brought you back from the dead. There's no stakes here. So, like, I don't. I don't know. The fight scene I thought was very.
There was no reason. It was also underwhelming because you had no reason to be concerned about anybody. They're not going to kill Ezra because they just found him. They're not going to kill Sabine because she has to be perfect Sabine, and she's like the new apprentice of Ahsoka. And Ahsoka is Ahsoka, and you're not going to kill the lead of your show. So you had no reason to fear for any of them in this fight.
No, and then the Great Mothers are chanting their little chants, and they. They like rise the night troopers from the dead, and they become zombies. Which I don't know. This was an interesting choice. I guess we should have seen this coming, but they're just like zombies, like trying to grab on them, and they obviously get away. Like they're not going to kill them.
I thought they were already dead.
I guess they made them less dead.
You kill them twice, they come back even more powerful.
Yeah, and obviously they do nothing because they're worthless and they're moving half speed now. So they make quick work of them. And then, what's his name? Thrawn is like, "Hey, we need more time to Morgan," and she's like, "Fine, no big deal. I don't care." And she's like, Thrawn and the Great Mothers leave, and they're like, "For the Empire," and she's like, "No, for Dathomir or whatever." So she goes to take him on.
For Narnia and for Aslan.
So then, for Aslan. And so, which, we can get to the title of this in a sec. But then we see the Jedi encounter Morgan in this large chamber. And then Ahsoka's like, "Hey, guys, go after Thrawn. I'll deal with her." Okay. So then Ezra and Sabine leave her, and then they start fighting Ahsoka and Morgan. And she uses her super secret magical sword, the sword of Dathomir, or whatever it's called.
The blade of Talzin.
Yeah, the blade of Talzin.
Get your fucking facts straight.
Sorry. So meanwhile, Thrawn's like, "Hey, we need to go." Morgan's putting up a good fight with Ahsoka. And in the meantime, we see these death troopers that are fighting Sabine and Ezra. Sabine's struggling to use the Force, but she's getting bested by one of them. She's struggling to use the Force to get her lightsaber, and then she finally was able to cut off the guy's head or whatever. Or maybe that was later when Ezra did it. Yeah, Ezra cuts off the guy's head, and we see that part. And it's like they don't show it, and it's like, why? Why can't we show that? Why can't we show the guy's head getting cut off? That was very weird to me. I'm sorry if this is like super nitpicky, but it's like we've seen Jango Fett's head get cut off in front of his kid. Like, we can't show.
We've also seen, Anakin cutting off Count Dooku's head. We've seen limbs chopped off in Star Wars, but for some reason in these Disney Plus shows, lightsabers don't really do any of that. It's just very, very strange. It's very strange that they won't let that happen. Also, did you get past the whole Sabine uses the Force moment? Because I have words.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I kind of glossed over that. But yeah, she does use the thing and then kills the guy. That was part of that scene.
It was another. Now stand and clap for this moment.
Yeah.
It had all the weight of, you should applaud for this now. And then Ezra does the same thing literally 2 seconds later, only it's way more effortless. So you're like, well, what was the point of that?
It gets more ridiculous in the next part of this scene. So we see Ezra and Sabine aren't able to reach the destroyer in the hangar in time. And meanwhile, we see the undead night troopers joining Morgan in her battle against Ahsoka, who aim their blasters at. I'm sorry. They're aiming at him, but they're not deciding to fight with them, which is also kind of weird because they're zombies. They don't know any better, right? I don't know. That was kind of weird. And then at this point, Sabine's like, hey, what if I force pushed you, even though I just learned the force like 2 seconds ago, I can push you onto the Star Destroyer. And Ezra's like, you sure you can do that? And she's like, I'll try. And then Bridger does a force jump, and then she pushes him with another moment that's supposed to be like super groundbreaking and badass.
Clap.
Man.
It's like a now clap moment.
And of course, guess what? He doesn't fall. Isn't that crazy? He doesn't actually fall.
So crazy, dude.
He makes the jump. He appears to fall, but then he grabs onto the ladder and drags one of the Imperial sentries down, and Ren shoots the second sentry. And you're like, yeah, badass, dude. This was
the lack of logic here. It just,
dude. While I'm watching it, I'm like, wait a minute. You just learned the Force 2 seconds ago. Ezra trusts you to be able to push him. Did we even know if he saw her use the Force? He didn't even question it. He's like, yeah, sure, I guess I'll try. And then get my
up until this point,
stance.
he would have no idea that she could even use the Force because they never talked about it.
Yeah.
So he has no notion of her Force abilities if she has Force abilities. So the fact that she would just say that, he would naturally, the response would have been, what are you talking about? What are you talking? When did you learn the Force? And honestly, the only reason they did this, dude, is because they needed Sabine to be stuck behind with Ahsoka. But again, you couldn't have written it in a different way.
I know.
Like, did it
you
have
even
to
need them to not be able
out?
to reach it? Why wasn't it like she made some kind of choice to be like, I gotta stay here. You go. I gotta stay and help.
I have to help Ahsoka. It could literally have just been that. Them having a conversation, him being like, I can't leave you. And she's like, we fought to get you home, despite my shitty decision making. So you go, and I'll help Ahsoka. Like, they could have just said that, and that would have been infinitely better than watching a scene where Sabine's magically all of a sudden able to use the Force in these amazing ways. When the whole series, it showcased, hey, she sucks at it. So
yeah. Well, I think the idea too was Ezra was going to pull her over. I guess use Force pull and pull her in.
He could have just pushed her at first, and he could have jumped.
Yeah, and then. But he wouldn't have made it, Melissa, because he couldn't jump far enough. I don't know.
Well, she could have force pulled him.
Yeah.
So he could have thrown her over, and then she could have magically pulled him over because she's suddenly good with the Force.
She is. She's an expert now. She's an expert at using the Force. So before she can join him, she's distracted by the sight of Ahsoka fighting Morgan with the Night Troopers. While Morgan and Ahsoka are fighting, she ends up busting up one of Ahsoka's lightsabers, which, I don't know. Is this chick really as good a fighter as Ahsoka? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Ahsoka's supposed to be this elite Jedi, and this chick is just a Night Sister with a cool samurai sword, and Ahsoka beat her easily before. And
she got baptized as a Dathomir Night Sister. So she has more power.
Destroys one of Ahsoka's lightsabers, which is tragic. And then Elsbeth is like kind of taunting Ahsoka that her friends are dead and she's going to die alone. And then Sabine comes in and starts fighting all the Night Troopers who are just standing around watching for some reason, which I still don't really understand, to be honest.
That's such a good point, dude. I didn't even think about that. They were literally just watching, and they could have just shot Ahsoka.
Yeah, easily.
When they were standing in the circle. It's the little things, dude. It's the little things in this show.
It's not thought out, I don't think. Like, you don't explain why. If there's an explanation for it, fine. But there was no.
Then you have to give the explanation. You have to give the explanation.
And they did not. The zombies just stood there being good zombies. Maybe Morgan, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she used her Night Sister magic to tell them to stand down. I don't know.
Again, you filling in the gaps. We shouldn't have any of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. So we see here after that happens, Ahsoka manages to win the battle and just slices Morgan across the waist with her remaining lightsaber, killing her. The Great Mother sensed the death of her sister, and Thrawn's like, well, she did her duty. All right, she sacrificed herself for Dathomir. Okay,
And
got it.
then Sabine has another now clap moment where she comes back to save
Please
Ahsoka.
clap. A Jeb Bush moment. Please clap.
Please clap.
Yeah. And then we see. Meanwhile, we see Ezra coming back. He's impersonating the night trooper using his comlink. Ahsoka asks where Ezra is, and Sabine's like, well, he's aboard the ship. Meanwhile, Thrawn orders the turbo laser batteries to bombard the fortress and destroy it. The undead night troopers are pursuing Ahsoka and Sabine off a cliff, but the two escape on Ahsoka's Jedi shuttle, which Huyang is flying. So perfect timing. He knew exactly where they were. Great. Ahsoka and Sabine join Huyang inside the cockpit and divert power to the engines. They rise inside the atmosphere and pursue the Eye of Sion. And they're like, hey, the Jedi is closing in to Thrawn. Thrawn's like, let's open a channel. So he starts talking to Ahsoka. He's like, I know you because I know your master. I've never met face to face, but trust me, I know who you are. I'm super smart and tactical, and I know all these things just because, believe me, I do. Let's see. His son says, long with the Empire, and ends up being like, hey, I'm going to leave you. See you later. And then they blast off into space and knock the ship all around. Then later we see Ahsoka and Sabine returning with their wolf thingies to the Turtle People convoy. Ahsoka sees Morai in the distance, the little bird thing you were talking about. And then meanwhile we see Shin riding towards a camp of the Red Bandits, and then it just ignites her lightsaber, drawing their attention. And then elsewhere we see Balin reaching two statues of the Father and the Son, and as he stares into the mountains beyond. Back in the main galaxy, Thrawn with Enoch and the Great Mothers watch from a balcony as the Eye of Sion and their ship approach Dathomir. We see all these coffins from the catacombs of the ship stored inside the hangar. Then we see a ETA-class shuttle landing in the hangar of Home 1, which is where the New Republic is, and we see Hera and Chopper and other New Republic soldiers being lame, standing around. And we see a lone trooper emerge with his mask on. And we see Chopper speaking in binary, approaches the figure who reveals himself to be Ezra. He just walked out of that ship for dramatic effect, I guess. Hera's super surprised. Actually, some of the best acting we've seen from her this season.
That was probably the best acting that she had in the entire show.
She genuinely looked surprised. That was good. And was happy to see him come home. And then we get to the last scene of the show where we see Ahsoka and Sabine outside alone in the Turtle People camp. They have this conversation. Sabine's upset that Thrawn escaped, which is all her fault. But Ahsoka says they managed to send Ezra home. And Sabine says she hopes that Ezra succeeded. Ahsoka responds that Ezra's where he needs to be, and so are they. Ahsoka tells Sabine it's time to move on as they watch the night sky. Sabine says she senses something, but doesn't really say much more than that. And then Ahsoka stares into the night sky, and we see the Force spirit of Anakin Skywalker watching over them, which was cool. Good to see my boy. I'm never going to complain when we see my boy Hayden Christensen. But a couple things to dissect here. Number one, Shin riding towards the camp of Red Bandits, ignites her lightsaber and just hangs
She
out.
killed them. She killed them all.
Yeah, what's
not just the men, but the women and the children.
Yeah, it's like, what was that? Is she their leader? Like, I'm so confused with the Balin Shin part of this. He's on the father and son statues.
First of all, they weren't in this episode for whatever reason. Why weren't they players in this final episode?
No clue. I'm very confused by this. So like genuinely I would like to know like what these were such interesting characters and they just sidelined them for the last two episodes for no reason. And I'm very confused. Why did Balin leave Shin? Truly, do you know why? Can you explain this?
Because he went to go see the Mortis gods, but they didn't explain that in any of the dialogue or the exposition in these last two episodes. Yeah. They vaguely hinted towards, he's leaving her so he can go look for the Mortis gods, I guess. Yeah. Because then they left off on that cliffhanger where he's standing on the hand of the father of Mortis. But if that's the case, you need to make that a little bit more clear. Because it didn't really seem like he was going to be leaving her up until the last two episodes. So... No. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't think they set that up. I don't think that they made that clear. I have no idea what Shin's purpose is in all of this. Everybody was theorizing that she was going to join Ahsoka, and then Ahsoka was like going to train her for whatever reason, which I don't know if I would have been crazy about that, but at least that would have put Shin somewhere. But Shin is aimless. She's not doing anything. Baylan is off looking for the Mortis gods, which is okay, great. That's an exciting part of the episode, but why didn't we set up that foundation throughout the show? Like,
also, why did he leave her? I don't understand why he left Shin.
Dude, nobody does.
What was that?
I don't know. Genuinely, dude, I do not know why he left Shin. And if the answer is Baylan left Shin because he's looking to pursue the son or the father or the daughter or the trio or whatever it is, they need to outline that in the dialogue, or at least they need to hint towards that more. Or maybe show us Shin and Baylan drifting apart in the series up until the point where he leaves. But there was no build up to it. It was just very random. It was like, okay, well, our characters are done interacting for now because the plot needs us to be done. So I'm going to go off here and do my own thing.
Yeah.
They didn't give any reasoning for it. And that's why I think it was so vague. And I think that...
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I think the reasoning was he felt the Mortis gods calling to him, but they didn't even outline that or make that clear.
If you don't know who they are, you have to explain that. You can't just gloss over that. It's a big deal, especially for a character like him, who I've loved up until these last 2 episodes, where they just kicked him to the curb and were like, sorry, we're not going to talk about you anymore. And
it is such a waste to cut off Baylan and Shin, because I think that they are a huge reason why so many people kept coming back to this show. I think most fans would agree that Baylan was the highlight of Ahsoka by far.
I think Shin's so. Cool. I think a lot of people think he was one-dimensional. I disagree. I think he was interesting. He did have a lot of like one-liners, which they could have expanded upon more, but he made him interesting and mysterious. And then for what? They didn't do anything.
They didn't reward you at the end. They needed to give you some kind of reward to say, okay, this is what he's doing. And they kind of did that, but they didn't do it in a satisfying way. It was just a vague, oh, well, he's going over here.
Yeah. No,
so I feel like he was
left.
Wasted potential. And Shin was wasted potential.
Apprentice.
Yeah.
Totally wasted potential. What's she doing now? She's just going to live on that planet. I'd be pissed if I was her. He seems to be happy and thinking about life, I guess, pondering life. And yeah, I am very upset that they didn't do anything with these 2 characters, which were very interesting and I think pretty well written up to this point. And then they just kicked them to the curb and said, sorry.
You're not going to have any role in the final 2 episodes.
No.
And we're not going to give you any development. So I think they were definitely wasted. I think that it is very, very strange that everyone is as casual as they were in this finale regarding the threat of Thrawn's return. Yep. In my opinion,
Ahsoka
I would have
and Sabine pretty much didn't care at all.
Ahsoka and Sabine are now exactly where they were at the start of the series, only they're the ones trapped on Peridia.
Yeah.
So the entire show just ended up exactly where it started off with it, which is 2 characters are trapped on this other galaxy and we have to go get them. And now Ahsoka and Sabine are those characters.
Well, and also now I look at this and I go, what is Sabine's arc? She made a big mistake. She made a huge, tiny mistake, as Joe Bluth would say from Arrested Development. And then that's it. She ruined everything. It's her fault Thrawn's back. And then there's no consequences for it. Ezra's gone.
Nor is anybody afraid. Nobody's afraid.
She doesn't really care that much that she left Ezra after caring about it so much at the beginning of the season, kind of. No one's afraid that Thrawn's gone. Ahsoka's character arc, there is none. There's literally, I couldn't tell you what her start to finish story was, because the show isn't about Ahsoka at the end of the day. If we want to be honest real quick, it's Rebels season 5, okay? And that means nothing to me, okay? And it means nothing to 90% of the people who are seeing that show pop up on Disney Plus. Ahsoka had no movement at all. She just looked at people smugly the whole show and had very mediocre lightsaber fights. Baylan was so close to having an arc, like a nice character story. Nope. Same with Shin. Nope. Thrawn, definitely not. He's just was trying to escape. Did not show any sort of intelligence beyond just being a general. Ezra might as well not have been a character because they didn't expand upon him at all. Hu Yang, he's a droid, but he's perfectly written and he can do nothing wrong. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just, the show was all over the place. And the way it ended, you know, we see the Force spirit of Anakin Skywalker looking over them. Okay, cool. You can get me with the feels with that. But at the same time, like...
It wasn't earned.
No.
It didn't bring anything full circle. Like, you can throw Hayden as many times as you want in this show, but at some point you're going to get to a place where you're like, now you're just doing it so people tune in.
Yeah.
When he appeared, was it episode 4, I think? When he appeared in episode 4 or 5 or whatever, that was really exciting. I love Hayden Christensen. I love seeing him come back to this role. I think that he could have had a really prominent part to play, but and in every appearance that they threw him in afterwards, and I'm not going to lie, it gets me. I love Hayden Christensen. I'm never going to complain when we see him, but by the time we got to this end, it was like, okay, well, why are you doing this? What's the point of you doing this? This doesn't feel like an earned moment for the characters. This feels like you're just doing it because you can do it.
Well, they also just showed him for one episode. Like, we didn't see a full connect. They didn't do enough with them in that episode. And we talked about this when I loved those scenes for the first half of that episode, but
it was confusing on what the messaging was. The messaging was really confusing.
Super confusing.
You could pull a million different lessons out of that. The gist, I think that most fans came to the conclusion is you need to not be like a victim of life and you need to choose to live. But even that was a half-baked idea because that was maybe a quarter of episode 5. And then the rest of the episode was about Ahsoka floating in the water and then Carson and Hera.
Yeah, which was unnecessary. You could have done the whole episode on them in the world between worlds, him talking to her more. I don't know. But I think, like, let's wrap this up nicely because this is the end of this episode, right? End of the season, okay? I think we need to get into some thoughts here as a whole, like, and we've kind of gotten into that. But I want to talk about a couple different things, and I want to try to be positive here because I tried my best to enjoy this show, like, and really, really enjoy it and love it. I tried to love it. I really did. And I've been very positive about it thus far. Mm-hmm. These last 2 episodes for me just didn't do it. I thought it was lazy writing, if I'm being honest. I think it was half-baked. I think they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't take time to explain and treat their audience with the respect that they need and the information that they need to understand and appreciate the show. However, series as a whole, I loved the cinematography for most of it. I think some of the cinematography in these last 2 episodes specifically was weird. And there was a couple scenes here and there throughout that were a little weird, but the world building elements were good. I think that was a very strong point. Some really cool sets. Set design was awesome. It really was strong where Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett and Mando struggled. I think they did a really good job with world building stuff. I think Baylan and Shin were super cool up to the last 2 episodes. Super cool. Just wasted characters. 0 arc. They just kind of left them in the dust. But there was a lot of potential, especially for Ray Stevenson. I think he really carried a lot of the show. I think he was really interesting. But they wasted it at the end. Anakin was amazing. I think he's the only one who fought cool. The only scenes that were really well choreographed were with him and Ahsoka.
Because he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing, dude. And, like, I've watched those scenes again, and it's just, he's such a standout. I think his acting was on point, obviously, for who we know this character as. That was a highlight, and that's why anyone who's watching the show who's not a diehard Star Wars fan is watching the show is because of Hayden Christensen, which I have another point on that I'll get back to in a minute. Hu Yang's really well done. Super interesting character, well written, a lot of thought and time put into him. I just don't know if we didn't have the same thing with everyone else. The Night Sister thing was cool. Like, them was an interesting element. It got a little corny and a little unexplained with the little red beam drone thingies. But I think that planet they were on was cool. The ideology is cool. The new galaxy was really cool. C3PO was fine, I guess. But there was a lot of really positive things. The music in this show.
Oh, my God.
Fantastic from start to finish. I think it's the most Star Wars-y music we've heard in the show. And huge shout out to Kevin Kiner. Just really well done, and I'm very impressed with that. And I think that was very refreshing to hear. So those are the positive things that I have to say. Things I don't like. There is 0 context for a lot of the stuff in the show. I understand you have to see Rebels, right, to fully understand it, but that's stupid. The show should stand on its own. I'm sorry. It should. It needs to stand on its own. To have a good TV show, it needs to be able to stand on its own. Better Call Saul is a spinoff of Breaking Bad. Frasier's a spinoff of Cheers. You don't need to have watched Cheers or Breaking Bad to see either of those shows. You can still appreciate them for what they are and who the characters are because they stand on their own. It would help if you watch the other shows. It adds to the story and there's little moments here and there that add to the show, but those shows stand on their own. I can add a million different examples if we really wanted to, but the lack of context was very disappointing for me. The New Republic is lame and uncool. I think it's always been poorly written. I think it's just not that interesting. Hera, not an interesting character. I think the acting was subpar with her. Could have been much, much better. She's a horrible mom.
Bring your kid
honestly,
to war day.
take her out of the show and you lose nothing. You lose absolutely nothing. The acting throughout the show just never really got better with certain characters. I really wanted to love Rosario Dawson, but she never stood out for me. She folded her arms and gave judgmental looks, and that was it for her. On that note, Sabine was like super unlikable. There was really not a lot of redeeming qualities for her. Her relationship with Ezra was weak and not well explained and not well telegraphed and shown, and just the character didn't click, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. Ezra seemed like he would have been cool, but he was just wasted potential. He should have used his lightsaber in the first fight. It could have been a huge moment for him to show what a badass this guy is, why we've been talking about him, why they're friends. They never showed any of that. I'm telling you guys, I wanted to love this. It just didn't hit. Thrawn, on the note of characters, didn't seem that smart. I have a lot of friends who love the Thrawn books. They love the Thrawn books. They've been telling me to read Heir to the Empire for a long time. I didn't see any of this menacing stuff. He didn't live up to his reputation. That's no diss on Lars Mikkelsen. I think his voice was cool, but he just said cool things. I didn't see any smart tactics. It was just all very basic stuff. He wasn't a genius. He didn't really fool them into anything. He just stood around and said stuff in a certain way. Night Sister Morgan was unlikable. I don't think that character's super needed. I think we could have gotten rid of her after Mando. I wasn't that impressed with her. It's just kind of an extra character we didn't need to spend time on because there's a billion other characters in the show. For the New Republic, I think we should have seen more about what's going on there. If you're going to show the lame and uncool New Republic, show what's going on in Coruscant and what's happening, like what they're actually doing. They just seem so lame. I don't know how else to put it. And then finally, I support Dave Filoni. I think he's been a huge helping hand with getting a lot of this Star Wars stuff off the ground and helping with Mando and some story points and getting the lore there and all that. But the dialogue was so weak with this show, and the writing was just not punchy. It just wasn't believable. It just felt like a very cheap kid show at the end of the day, if I'm going to be honest. And it had every reason to be an amazing show. There's no reason it shouldn't be amazing. We've had plenty of Star Wars shows at this point. Mando Season 2 was really good. Obi-Wan Kenobi could have been great. It just wasn't. Mando Season 3 could have been great. It wasn't. But Book of Boba Fett had some great moments, but it wasn't a great show. It just felt messy. The show felt very messy and just all over the place. I don't understand why it's called Ahsoka. It's just Rebels Season 5. Why Ahsoka didn't have an arc? We focused on only her for one episode. That was the best episode with Anakin. And even that wasn't driven home 100% what the point was. I had friends text me who aren't rabid Star Wars fans who go, bro, I'm having the toughest time with this show. Like, I just don't. And I wanted them to like it. I wanted them to be like, oh, this is awesome. But I had multiple people talk to me and be like, is this show worth watching? I'm like, well, there's a couple episodes. Like, the Anakin stuff is awesome. If you like Anakin, then yeah. They're like, yeah, that's what I want to see. And I'm like, all right, well, you're going to have to watch a couple episodes before that. So they watched it up to that point, and they're like, dude, I'm so lost. I have no clue what's going on. And they watched it up to the point where Anakin was in, and then they just stopped. They were like, I stopped watching the show after that because I couldn't follow. I didn't know what was going on. It just wasn't good. And,
well,
and that's not from me. That's not from me, dude. That's from other people who have told me. Like, I'm friends with them. I'm very close. Our brother's one of them. Mike texted me and was like,
yeah,
I wanted to like this show, dude. It's just, I just don't. And that'll tell you a lot of what you need to know about it. Like, that's not a good sign. Your show should be able to stand on its own. So, while there was really good moments and really good features with it that I was really happy about, like the cinematography, the music, Hu Yang and the Anakin stuff, it missed the mark at the end of the day. The full story of the season just was very unfulfilling, I think. So sorry, I just did a huge word vomit there, but
No,
that's just kind of how I feel. And I'm bummed out. I'm not happy sitting here like, oh, it was the worst. I'm not just trying to shit on it for the sake of shitting on it. I just think it missed the mark big time. These last 2 episodes, especially, like these 2 really mediocre episodes in a row, didn't tie things up nicely. And it just left me feeling a little exhausted from Star Wars, if I'm being honest. I was looking forward to these episodes week after week, and it changed at the drop of a hat. So I don't know. Hope that's not too negative. Hope it wasn't too mean, but
I mean, I don't really know what I'm going to say now in response to that, because I think you pretty much hit every nail on the head that I would have expressed. Genuinely. Like, I don't know what I could say that would differ in opinion from you. I think that, like, the music, absolutely incredible. No qualms on that. I agree with everything you said about Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, Hera. I think you could have taken characters like Hera and Morgan out. I don't think the focus was in the right place for a lot of the story beats. For me, personally, the story just felt very surface level. You're seeing the iceberg, but you're not looking, there's nothing underneath the iceberg. Yeah. There's nothing building it up. And it just felt really shallow. And I don't feel good saying that. Like, I'm not saying that because I want to actively bash on the show or just complain about it to complain. But I think these final 2 episodes really hurt the show. After episode... What episode did Anakin appear in? 5?
Yes.
I think the show took a hard turn for the worse after episode 5. In fact, I went into the show with the expectation that it would only get better. But I think by the time I know a lot of people that loved episode 6. I am not one of those people. I don't. In fact, I'm struggling to understand why people liked it so much. I thought it fell on its face really, really hard, and one of those reasons being the Sabine and Ezra reunion. There was like no reaction from either of those characters, and that's where I started to go, "Oh no, I think we might be in trouble." And then episode 7 happened last week, and I felt nothing. Like, I turn off these episodes, Matt, and I don't think about it after they finished. And I hate that. I really hate that. Like, in comparison to, like, Clone Wars Season 7, as an example, I could not stop thinking about that for weeks. I loved that season. I loved the final 4 episodes, in my opinion, are some of the best Star Wars ever written. And this show just didn't leave any impression on me. And I think these last 2 episodes really, really hurt it. Again, I don't think I'm going to say much that differs from your opinion. I pretty much share all of your sentiments. The one thing I will say is... I do wish that the show had been animated as originally planned, because I think Dave Filoni is king of animated Star Wars content. But I also think that with him writing this show, it also exposed maybe a lot of his weaknesses as a sole writer.
Yeah.
As opposed to having a story group and a team of people to give their different input and to bounce ideas off of and go, does this story thread make sense based on what we have set up in episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe some of his soul writing got exposed here as not being the best.
Yeah.
Because he was the only person on the team. Totally. And so for that reason, I'm just wondering, I think this show would have been better had it been animated as originally planned.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed. I don't like saying that, but like, this show did not make any impression on me. And I don't think it needed to be live action. Yeah. I don't think it needed to be the route that it actually
definitely
ended up
didn't.
Going down.
I was nervous about it when they announced it, because I felt the same way. I didn't know if they were going to need the live action portion of it, and I don't think they did. I think you're totally right. It probably would have landed better as an animated show.
In my opinion, the animated series are the strongest.
I agree. They're strongest from him, Filoni at least. And I'm still gonna root for the guy. Root for Filoni, but it did expose a lot of weaknesses with the writing. I think you need some writers in there who, like, Disney needs to recruit some writers who are professionals at like story arcs, character arcs, how to connect everything. And like, they just haven't done that with Star Wars. They haven't invested in that, and that's disappointing. But I'm disappointed with this, but I'm not giving up. I'm just exhausted with Star Wars, and I'm also a little sleep deprived because I have a newborn child who I do have to go attend to at the moment. So we should probably wrap this up. It's been a long episode.
It's been a very long episode, but we haven't chatted in a while, and we did break down 2 episodes, and we're giving our thoughts on the entire series. So, real quick, what would you rate episode 7? What would you rate episode 9? And what would you rate the season as a whole?
I'd rate episode 7 like a 4.
I was going to say 4.5/5.
Yeah. And I'd rate episode 8 maybe like a 5. Maybe a little less. It's just right middle of the road for any kind of episode. Nothing really crazy to take away. And just as a season ender, very weak. Very weak stuff, especially for Balin and Shin. They deserved better. And so did Thrawn, honestly. Series as a whole, these last 2 episodes really tanked it for me, honestly.
It did, yeah.
Like, I would give it maybe a 6. 6.4, I think, is what I'd probably go with. It's slightly above average because of the Anakin stuff, and there's really good cinematography. There's really good music. The sets are cool. The acting is just not there. The writing's not there. The story's not there. And I wouldn't recommend this to somebody. I wouldn't, and that's just honest. I wouldn't. If someone asked me, should I watch the show, I'd be like, you could probably skip it. It's not.
You could watch episode 5 and then nothing else.
It's not must watch Star Wars in my opinion. And I don't. That sucks, but that's just the way it is. So.
Yeah, I don't sit here wishing it was bad, but I'd have to give the ratings the same. I think episode 7's probably a 4 point something. I don't know, 4.4 out of 10. Episode 8's probably like a late 4s, early 5 out of 10. And then the season as a whole, I would agree with you. I think it's probably in the 6s. Yeah. And again, like the Anakin stuff was good, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. And overall, there are a lot of things to like about the show and to appreciate. But I don't think that all of those small individual elements are enough to save the show as a whole. And I'm sad about that because I really, really came into the show wanting to love it. I had nothing but like positive expectations, but I agree with you. I think these last 2 episodes really, really tanked the show for me. Yeah. And I just now have a bad taste in my mouth. And that doesn't feel good to say. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And honestly, I just don't know how to feel about Star Wars right now. So I'm in the really same boat. I wanted to love this one, but I didn't. And now I'm just left going, well, is any of it gonna come back around?
Yeah, look, dude, I'm exhausted with it. Like, I'm exhausted, obviously, because I'm not getting much sleep at the moment. But those last 2 episodes just didn't wrap up anything very nicely. And it just made me going like, oh, God, like another show that just kind of ended. All right, whatever. And look, people roast us in the comments if you want. That's fine. I'm trying to be fair, and I'm trying to be honest. Yeah, I'm trying to be honest here about how I felt with the show. It just felt me like wanting something else, something different, something more than what they gave us. And I always try to be as fair as possible, and I'm still trying to be as fair as possible. I think fairly, what I'm saying is the show was not good. It was not. It was not wrapped up well. I think if you enjoyed it, great. I'm so happy you enjoyed it. I'm really, really am. It just wasn't for me. My standards are very high, like very high. Because again, I'm comparing this to all TV shows that have ever existed. Okay, there's some really good TV shows out there, and if you're comparing it to the Breaking Bad, the Sopranos, the True Detectives of the world, it is not even in the same universe. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's it. That's it for today, guys. And that's it for actually a while. I don't know when our next episode will be. Maybe we'll do a Star Wars news episode at some point soon. But I have my hands full, as everyone can probably imagine. Having a newborn is tough work. But we're loving life. Everything's great. Family's happy. Baby's sleeping a little bit better now.
I don't know. Maybe we'll watch one of those Star Wars specials from the 70s or the 80s. And maybe
I want to do a Kenobi movie Patterson cut reaction still. So maybe I'll do that in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned. I know I've been saying that for a while, but my life's been a little busy. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe we can do that together or something. But
yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
Or maybe a live stream talking about the show. Maybe we do something like that. Maybe we do a live stream talk about the show and see what our viewers think. What do you guys think, by the way?
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments. Roast us if you want. That's totally fine. I get it. Some people really, really like the show and are mad to hear us complain about it, but I don't think our criticisms are totally off, to be honest.
No, I don't.
Yeah, maybe we do like a live stream chat through for like an hour sometime this week.
It would be nice to do a live stream chat through to give everybody a chance to share their thoughts or talking points that we might have missed, because it's a lot to talk about and break down. But yeah, guys, drop a comment and let us know your thoughts on the season as a whole. What would you rank it? I'd be really interested to see how people would rank it. Let us know. Let us know how you're feeling about the future of Star Wars right now. But I think that's pretty much our thoughts on this episode and the season as a whole. So
yeah, we'll see you guys next time, hopefully on a live stream, and we'll talk more.
Okay. See you guys later.